rock music has died at the age of 52. He had a heart attack at his home in Nashville, Tennessee, and died in hospital shortly afterwards. He became one of the biggest stars of the 60s, and only recently was in the charts again with Bob Dylan and George Harrison.
For decades, Roy Orbison's life has been shrouded in mystery, with whispers of tragedy, lost opportunities, and untold struggles behind the voice that captivated millions. Now, new revelations have emerged, and the truth is far darker than anyone imagined. The man whose voice could melt hearts and whose songs seemed timeless was fighting battles the public never saw. The mystery surrounding his personal life, career setbacks, and the forces that shaped him is finally coming to light. And the story is as heartbreaking as it is shocking. Roy Orbison was more than a singer. He was a symbol of resilience, creativity, and emotional vulnerability. Yet behind the fame, there were hidden pressures, personal losses, and industry betrayals that threatened to unravel everything he had built. Fans celebrated the music, but no one knew the cost. The sleepless nights, the endless travel, and the private grief that orbited his extraordinary talent. Now, for the first time, insiders and rare records reveal how mismanagement, personal tragedies, and harsh realities of fame collided in ways that nearly destroyed him. This isn't just a story about setbacks or bad luck. It's a story of a man whose genius was constantly tested by forces beyond his control. The Roy Orbison mystery is finally solved, and the truth is far worse than anyone could have imagined. Roy Orbison was a man whose voice seemed larger than life, a voice that could soar effortlessly over any melody, capturing heartbreak, longing, and hope with equal precision. Fans knew the music, but few understood the man behind it. Behind the sunglasses, behind the stage presence, there was a quiet intensity and vulnerability that shaped both his art and his life. For decades, the public believed that his career had been one of near-perfect success. But the truth was far more complicated and far darker. From the earliest days of his career, Orbison faced pressures that most aspiring artists could scarcely imagine. The demands of recording, touring, and meeting industry expectations collided with personal challenges in ways that few outsiders saw. His extraordinary talent brought attention, acclaim, and opportunity, but it also attracted scrutiny and manipulation. Executives and managers who promised guidance often acted in self-interest, steering his career in directions that prioritized profit over his creative vision. Orbison, focused on the music he loved, sometimes found himself at odds with those who were supposed to protect his interests. Even as hits like "Oh, Pretty Woman" and "Crying" made him a household name, his personal life was fraught with hardship. Tragedy struck repeatedly, testing his resilience. Family loss, financial instability, and the demands of fame collided to create stress that most fans could never imagine. For a man whose music expressed such raw emotion, the weight of these burdens was almost unbearable. Orbison had to navigate a delicate balance, maintaining his public persona as a confident, polished performer while carrying private grief that threatened to overwhelm him. Orbison's struggles were compounded by industry, mismanagement, and the sometimes ruthless nature of Hollywood. Contracts that seemed advantageous were often stacked against him. Creative decisions were made without his consent, and opportunities for genuine collaboration were occasionally overshadowed by self-serving executives. The music he loved became, at times, a source of frustration rather than fulfillment. Even as audiences celebrated his genius, the man himself was left feeling isolated, forced to protect his heart while sharing it so openly in his songs. Yet Orbison continued. He poured himself into his performances, channeling pain into art, grief into melody. His voice became a vessel for emotion that transcended the personal turmoil he endured. And while fans marveled at his power, few realized the toll it took to maintain that brilliance. Each note carried not only technical mastery, but a lifetime of struggle, grief, and determination. Now, decades later, new revelations bring clarity to a story that has long been obscured by myth and legend. Insider accounts, rare interviews, and historical records reveal the true scale of the challenges Orbison faced. Mismanagement, personal tragedy, and the relentless demands of fame combined in ways that threatened not just his career, but his very sense of stability. The man who gave the world such soaring music was often fighting battles entirely out of public view. For the first time, a fuller picture emerges, not just of Roy Orbison the performer, but of Roy Orbison the human being. It is a story of brilliance tested by circumstance, of genius shadowed by misfortune, and of a man whose life was far more fragile than the public ever imagined. The mystery surrounding him, once romanticized, is finally revealed for what it truly was, a life shaped by talent, resilience, and an unrelenting struggle against forces beyond his control. As Roy Orbison's career gained momentum, the pressures around him grew in tandem. Fame arrived quickly, bringing with it not only adoring fans, but a network of people who often prioritized their own gain over his well-being. Managers, record executives, and industry insiders sometimes manipulated his trajectory, guiding him toward short-term profits while undermining his creative control. Orbison, devoted to his artistry, struggled to assert authority over decisions that shaped his own work. He wanted his music to reflect authenticity and emotional depth, but the business side of fame frequently clashed with his vision, leaving him frustrated and isolated. The paradox of Orbison's life was that his greatest asset, his voice, also made him vulnerable. People expected perfection from him, both on stage and off. A single misstep could jeopardize opportunities or tarnish a public image meticulously cultivated over years. Behind the stage lights and polished performances, Orbison faced relentless pressure to maintain composure while coping with private challenges that few knew existed. Personal loss struck repeatedly. Family tragedies, financial instability, and the constant travel that came with touring took a toll on his emotional and physical health. Each performance required not only vocal mastery, but emotional fortitude to mask the weight of life behind the songs. Orbison's relationships with collaborators were also tested. He longed for creative partnerships that were genuine and mutually respectful. Yet the music industry often fell short of that ideal. Executives imposed timelines and song choices, while some fellow artists pursued self-interest over collaboration. Orbison's desire for authenticity frequently collided with the commercial strategies of those around him, leaving him in the difficult position of balancing integrity with survival. The frustration of these conflicts was amplified by his own sensitivity. He felt deeply, and each slight real or perceived left a mark. Despite these challenges, Orbison's resilience shone through. He poured his heart into his music, using it as both expression and shield. Songs like Running Scared and In Dreams captured universal emotions, yet also reflected his own private struggles. Audiences were moved by the soaring melodies, often unaware of the grief and exhaustion behind them. Orbison's ability to channel personal hardship into transcendent art became a defining feature of his legacy. It was a testament not only to his talent, but to his perseverance in the face of adversity that few could imagine. During this time, Orbison's personal life added layers of complexity. Loss and hardship followed him relentlessly. Family tragedies created emotional wounds that never fully healed, and the demands of fame allowed little space for recovery or reflection. Yet he continued to perform, driven by the knowledge that music was his lifeline, the one arena where he could translate pain into something beautiful. It was a delicate balance, one that required extraordinary discipline, courage, and emotional control. As new records, interviews, and insider accounts reveal, the extent of these struggles has often been understated. Mismanagement, personal grief, and industry pressures converged in ways that created a near-constant state of tension. Yet Orbison's genius never faltered. Each song he wrote and performed carried the imprint of a man confronting adversity with unwavering commitment. While audiences celebrated the music, few realized the cost. The personal battles, the relentless pressure, and the resilience required to continue creating at such a high level paints a picture of a man whose brilliance was inseparable from his struggles. Roy Orbison's life was a constant negotiation between art and circumstance, emotion and expectation. Even as fame and talent elevated him above his peers, they also isolated him in ways that shaped his career and his legacy. The story of his life, once shrouded in mystery, is now clearer, revealing the depth of the challenges he faced and the extraordinary courage with which he faced them. By the mid-1960s, Roy Orbison had reached a critical juncture in his career. His soaring voice and emotionally charged performances had earned him widespread acclaim. Yet behind the curtain, the pressures of life and the music industry were mounting. Record labels demanded hits, fans expected perfection, and media scrutiny left no room for mistakes. Orbison's personal tragedies only intensified these pressures, creating a tension between public adoration and private struggle. For someone so deeply sensitive, each performance became both an opportunity and a test of endurance. Tragedy had already marked Orbison's life repeatedly, and the weight of grief was a constant companion. He endured devastating family losses that left emotional scars impossible to ignore. Yet he channeled this pain into his music, creating songs of heartbreak, longing, and melancholy that resonated with audiences worldwide. Each note was a testament to both his extraordinary talent and his resilience, but it came at a cost. The more he gave emotionally on stage, the more his private heartache intensified. The public saw the voice, the power, and the emotion, but few understood the man beneath it. Orbison's creative relationships were equally fraught. He sought collaborators who would honor his vision, yet he often encountered individuals who prioritized commercial gain over artistic integrity. Songwriters, producers, and industry executives sometimes manipulated or exploited his trust, leaving him frustrated and isolated. The very industry that celebrated his genius also challenged his autonomy, forcing him to navigate contracts, decisions, and opportunities that threatened to undermine both his music and his confidence. Despite these obstacles, Orbison refused to compromise the emotional core of his artistry. Every song was deliberate, every performance a careful blend of technical mastery and emotional honesty. He believed that music was more than entertainment, it was a means of connecting deeply with the human experience. This philosophy guided him even when personal and professional pressures threatened to overwhelm him. During this period, Orbison also grappled with the relentless demands of touring. Long stretches on the road left him physically exhausted and emotionally drained. Yet he continued to perform night after night, often masking his grief behind sunglasses and calm stage presence. The contrast between his public composure and private struggle was stark, highlighting the extraordinary discipline required to maintain his craft. Friends and colleagues observed his talent, but few truly understood the emotional labor it required. New revelations now reveal how these pressures compounded behind the scenes. Mismanagement of contracts, lack of proper guidance, and repeated personal losses created a volatile mix that Orbison navigated with remarkable resilience. The man who delivered such transcendent music was simultaneously fighting battles that would have overwhelmed anyone else. Each triumph in the charts or on stage was matched by silent endurance offstage. By the end of this period, Orbison had become a figure defined as much by his struggles as his success. His voice remained unparalleled, but it carried the weight of personal tragedy, industry manipulation, and relentless expectation. For all the joy it brought to listeners, his music was inseparable from the suffering, discipline, and courage required to produce it. Illuminates the duality of Orbison's life, a man whose genius was inseparable from the trials he faced, and whose emotional resilience defined not just his music, but his legacy. As Roy Orbison's career progressed into the later decades, the full extent of the struggles he endured began to emerge, revealing a life far more challenging than the public had imagined. Behind the iconic sunglasses and the hauntingly powerful voice was a man grappling with relentless personal tragedy, industry pressures, and the constant demand to perform at a level that few could sustain. Each chart-topping hit and celebrated performance masked the resilience required to navigate the world behind the spotlight. A world filled with obstacles that threatened both his personal and professional stability. Orbison's resilience became his defining characteristic. While the music industry often attempted to shape him into a commercial product, he steadfastly preserved the emotional honesty that made his voice unique. He refused to compromise his artistry, even when mismanagement and exploitation of his trust placed him at a disadvantage. Every recording session and performance became an act of quiet defiance against forces that sought to prioritize profit over creativity. His genius was not merely in his singing, it was in his ability to persist, to transform personal suffering into transcendent art that would resonate across generations. The private tragedies Orbison faced were profound. Losses in his family, the pressures of relentless touring, and the isolation that often accompanied fame could have broken a lesser individual. Yet Orbison absorbed these challenges and channeled them into his music, giving audiences songs that spoke to universal human experiences. In doing so, he transformed his pain into connection, proving that vulnerability and strength are not mutually exclusive. His voice became both a gift and a shield, protecting him while allowing the world to feel the depth of his humanity. Even decades later, the revelations surrounding Orbison's life highlight how the man behind the music was far more complex than popular perception suggested. The very struggles that threatened to derail him ultimately cemented his legacy. Each obstacle he faced, the mismanagement, the personal grief, the industry pressures added layers to his artistry, shaping the emotional intensity that defines his work. Orbison's life demonstrates that brilliance is often inseparable from adversity, and that the most enduring art is born from a combination of talent, struggle, and resilience. The new understanding of Orbison's hidden challenges casts his accomplishments in a profoundly human light. He was not simply a voice on a record. He was a man confronting the harsh realities of life while simultaneously sharing his soul with the world. His music became a testament to endurance, vulnerability, and the triumph of art over circumstance. Where earlier narratives focused solely on his success, these revelations reveal the full spectrum of his experience, painting a portrait of genius tested by relentless trials. Ultimately, Roy Orbison's story is one of courage, perseverance, and transcendence. While the public celebrated the soaring vocals and unforgettable melodies, the man behind them endured challenges that were nearly impossible to bear. His resilience, discipline, and dedication ensured that his music would outlive both the struggles he faced and the era in which he lived. The Roy Orbison mystery, once shrouded in myth and speculation, is now understood in its full scope, revealing a life that was as remarkable in its trials as it was in its triumphs. Orbison's legacy is no longer just the music, but the story of a human being who rose above circumstance to create something eternal. The voice that captivated millions was forged in adversity, making every note a testament to survival, artistry, and the unbreakable spirit of a man who refused to be defined solely by the hardships he endured. His life, once misunderstood, is now celebrated in its full depth, a narrative of tragedy, transformed into timeless music that continues to resonate with the world.